Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders, our many clients and collaborators. Today we have a special guest with us, and I say special because we are doing our first live stream. Okay, so who are you and what do you do when you're not being interviewed?
Well, I'm flattered that I'm the first live stream out here. So my name is Gregory Rozdeba. I'm the director of sales over here at Finaeo, and what we're in the process of doing is digitizing the MGA over here. So pretty exciting stuff. But I guess, oh geez, what do I do when I'm not being interviewed? I've been doing a lot of cycling this summer because I mean, along the lakeshore, you can go anywhere from Niagara Falls to practically Ottawa. But that's slowly winding down. I think I have another couple of weeks of that. But recently, I've been reading a lot. One thing I'd recommend to every financial advisor out there is Artificial Intelligence by Nick Bostrom. It's written in very layman terms. So, I mean, if you don't know anything about artificial intelligence or machine learning, it'll break it down piece by piece. I'm not getting paid for that endorsement, but it really is a good book.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. It's a book that I'm not familiar with, but it sounds like it could be a good one.
Highly
And
recommend.
yeah, where is your office located?
We're over on Queen West, so we're right on Queen and Dovercourt in the Great Hall. So I think it's a 130-year-old building to my understanding. At one point it was a YMCA, then it was a community center. I think they published a newspaper here for a while as well, but now it's a concert venue. So the first 3 floors, there's 2 concert venues, and on the 4th floor it's a string of offices. So that's where we're located over here.
And that's in downtown Toronto?
Yeah, and I guess the reason we chose it was when we started Finaeo early days, the bunch of us were located within a half-hour walk of the building, and when we were looking for office space, we thought it'd be most convenient to be, for it to be near our houses. So that's why we ended up here.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's nice to be able to work close to where you live, and we've done the same thing ourselves. Really cuts down on the commute.
The commute is brutal.
Yeah. So in our interview, we're talking about how tech can improve the client experience.
Mhm.
So first of all, in the advisory space, what is the client experience like typically?
Well, right now I think it's very analog. I think most of it is paper-based, and I think it's a bit of a slog. So to kind of the way it was explained to me initially when I came to Finaeo was, I was asked, do you know how an insurance policy is transacted today? I mean, not knowing much about the specifics, I thought you just go on kinetics.com, you plug in the variables, and bing, bang, boom, you have a policy, right? But especially for some of the more complicated tax planning, like the planning that you do, it's not that straightforward. So but it's all very paper-based. So say, you need a couple of different policies with a couple of different carriers. You're sitting there with a client. You're filling it out with them for a prolonged period of time. And it's relatively tedious. If everything goes well, it takes between 4 and 6 weeks. If everything doesn't go well, it could take upwards of 6 months. And I mean, in effect, what we're positioning is a math equation in many respects. I mean, if someone is this healthy and they're looking for this sort of product with this sort of term, it's a bunch of variables and you can, in effect, spit out an answer eventually. But it's been very analog. And I think going forward, software will play a role in streamlining this process, whether it's for delivery or whether it's for underwriting. I think the whole process will be overhauled over the course of the next 20 years or so.
Yeah, so I completely agree. The process is very paper heavy right now. And we've had situations where we have to drive for hours to fill out an application because it has to be done on paper.
Yep.
And that just seems so odd in 2018. Are there other aspects to the client experience besides the heavy use of paper?
Well, I think in this day and age, I think everyone's looking for an all-in-one solution almost. It's not just, can you take care of my mortgage or can you take care of my insurance? It's, here's the problem that I'm trying to solve. Can you fix it? And I think as there's a bit more of a push towards holistic planning, I think that planner or that advisor will have to become a point person for many different areas that they're not necessarily familiar with. So having someone that you partner up with for mortgages or having someone that you partner up with on the wealth side, so that if someone comes to you with a problem, you can figure out the solution regardless of if it's your area of expertise.
Okay.
But I think the other, go ahead.
So you're not saying that the advisor themselves has to be an expert in all these different areas, but they can align themselves with people who are experts in those other fields.
Well, that's exactly it. And I know there's been this push in the industry, and I think this is what differentiates a lot of the great advisors from the okay advisors is, you're not just positioning a product. You really are selling a solution. I think a lot of people come to advisors with a problem, and that if you can provide something like, you're buying a house, it's a huge decision. What do you need? You need a mortgage. You need to insure that mortgage. You might have some money left over. And hey, you also have a kid, so you need to get that RESP in order as well. Given the first three variables, how do you plan for the fourth? This is all an integrated experience that they'd be looking for because everything's really tied together in that situation.
Yeah, because the reality is that most of the issues that clients have are outside of our own ability to resolve. And either we can say, well, sorry, you have issues elsewhere, deal with them yourselves, figure them out, or we can help and bring solutions to those clients through our networks.
That's exactly it. And I think a lot of advisors have these networks. And I was chatting with someone, a younger advisor last week, and he was saying, listen, like a lot of the people that I deal with just aren't very old. And like he doesn't mean that in a bad way, but just like in their 20s, starting to plan their life, don't have a lot in savings, are slowly starting to buy houses. And he thought, as an advisor who's insurance focused, there isn't a lot that I can do. So what he started doing was reaching out to mortgage advisors, working with them very closely. And all of a sudden, all of his friends and all his clients that were looking to buy a house, he could actually offer up an integrated experience.
Okay, excellent. How is technology enhancing the client experience these days?
In every aspect, really. So when it comes to being able to, let's start with like managing the files, so what the client could see. So if they're looking for an area where they can manage their entire experience, I think the banks have done a relatively good job of just keeping it all on one platform. If you go on RBC's website, if you go on TD's website, BMO's website, if you have everything with them, whether it's a mortgage, investment products, insurance products, and the bunch, it's all in one space. And I think that's been a serious competitive advantage for the banks. And now I think for a lot of independent advisors, whether it's on the insurance, the wealth, the mortgage side, you name it, there are a lot of companies that are slowly emerging on the tech side that can provide that kind of similar experience, but for independent advisors who are oftentimes more qualified to deal with that kind of individual. So I think, when it comes to managing all your documents in one place, and over here at Finaeo, what we saw a lot of demand for from our advisors' clients was a portal where they can access all their documentation. Not too crazy from a technical standpoint, but not many options currently exist for something like that. But for an advisor, when it comes to managing a relationship, we hear all the time from advisors that sometimes through their own fault, sometimes through no fault of their own, they just don't have time to reach back out to clients over the course of a year. So using something like one of the softwares that we use in-house is called BombBomb. We build out a video cadence with topics that may be relevant to that individual. So if someone's in their, let's say 20 to 35, we can have like a 6-week segment around, this is what you should look for in a mortgage. This is what you should look for with regards to insurance. Mortgage insurance versus creditor insurance versus life insurance, what's the best option for you? It's a very easy way to build engagement with that sort of subset while informing your client base on an ongoing basis, whereas, you might not be able to, call them on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis when, sometimes you can only chat with someone once every half year. Or,
Right.
even small and simple things like, even like a scheduling software like Calendly. From a process
We
standpoint, it
use
helps.
that.
Great. It's fantastic because all of a sudden, I'm sure you've seen it before. It's the reason I got it. You're on an email chain that goes back and forth for like, I don't know, let's say 6 different emails. Like, oh, are you free on Wednesday? Actually, Wednesday's a bad day. How's your Thursday looking? Well, I'm available at 11. Well, I'm not available at 11. How's Friday looking at this point? Well, my Friday's all booked. How's the week after? And all of a sudden you're like, what am I wasting my time on? So this effectively eliminates a lot of that.
Yeah. So with Calendly, you're putting your calendar online, and then people are just booking an appointment with you directly.
Well, that's exactly it. And where I challenge a lot of advisors is, if you're spending, there is a free version with 2 options, which I think is good enough for most advisors. When it comes to scheduling meetings with your clients or, with partners that you have in the industry, if you just send them out this link, would save you a lot of time. And what we've seen with a lot of advisors is that it has, at very little cost to them.
Yeah, that's a good example. You mentioned using BombBomb. Now, that's a video tool. Are you putting the videos on YouTube, or how are people getting these videos from you?
Sure. So BombBomb goes to their email. For a lot of folks, I mean, whether you're young or you're old, I mean, you have access to email. So, I mean, YouTube's great if you're looking for something a bit more public facing. We do put some of those videos up on YouTube, but from a tactical marketing standpoint, we found it to be far more effective when you have, your either age segments or your geography segments or your product segments, and you forward off that message accordingly. So you just put them in a specific cadence, and then you push the, I don't know, 6 weeks, 12 weeks, 18 weeks, depending on the content you have for every subject, out to that client so you keep a conversation ongoing. I know that might sound annoying initially for a lot of advisors where they're thinking, this is just gonna, who has the time to watch this, or who cares? The answer is a bit strange. If they see the subject line and it's relevant to them, they will watch the video. And if there's a call to action, there's a good likelihood that 1 or 2 people will reach out with additional questions. I think that's building real value for clients.
Okay, now I'm not very familiar with Fineo. So
Sure.
what's being done there to help with the client experience?
Sure. So we're doing a couple of things. So we want to give the advisors the ability to manage the entire process, prospect to policy, entirely digitally. So we spent the first year and a half or so building out a front-end CRM, something that's easy to manage, something that's easy to use. And at first, I wasn't sure what place this would have in the market as I started calling advisors. But then I realized when it comes to digital management tools, the vast majority still don't use anything. I think, maybe a quarter of them use some sort of CRM.
Maybe
Another,
Outlook, if anything?
quite a few do. So I mean, I know I'm not going to say suite of products. I'm not sure that's accurate, but some people just work with a string of reminders. But I mean, from an audit standpoint, it can get a little bit messy if there's no centralized place to track all of that. And then quite a few are pen and paper. I mean, it's worked for so long. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think as time goes on, a lot of these digital tools, including our own, will allow you to just sync everything up in one area. And despite the productivity gains that could be found in a platform like ours, the big push recently has been from a compliance standpoint. If you just front load all the compliance, if you do your needs analysis before you even meet with the client, just validate that everything's correct and plug in some things that are missing, all that gets synced right into the CRM. Any sort of documentation is included in the client profile, and every touch point that you've had, whether it's a phone call, whether it's an email, whether it's just a general meeting and you took notes, all of that is included in one area, timestamped, so that when you get audited, because it really is an inevitability, you don't need to worry about where everything currently stands. It's all included in the platform. So we spent the first year and a half building out the CRM aspect of things. We continue to create additional functionality and improve on existing functionality. But what we'll be looking to do over the course of the next few years is tie in the carriers directly so that an advisor would have the ability to transact applications through the platform. That's the vision. That's the goal.
Okay.
And
Now, the CRM that you've been building for this length of time, because I understand that it's very important, and we started with the CRM because I don't know how you run a business without that. What do you charge?
nothing. Uh,
Okay, how do you do this for free? I was a
well,
little puzzled at your business model.
Sure, I think that's fair, and I think it'll become relatively evident in a few years why that's the case, and I'll run you through it right now. As these integrations get put into place, we really wanted to give advisors an area where they can manage their business, and I think that's the value to the advisor. But on the back end, as we tie in these integrations where we could potentially provide, like product recommendations for advisors, we need to see where that data is coming through. We would need to see, who's transacting, who isn't transacting, which age bracket. So basically, use a very simple layer of machine learning to give recommendations to advisors based off like a macro set of data. So I think that's something that we're building towards. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that are, whether it's from a privacy standpoint that are being taken into consideration, from a data standpoint, from mostly on the privacy front, to ensure that the client is being looked after and no one's being crossed here. But the CRM in and of itself is a bit of an intake tool so that we can use that data to provide more value to the advisor. But given that we operate as an agency and we have a partnership with Hub over here, we do have access to the broader product book, and we can contract advisors and get compensated like most other MGAs get compensated.
Okay, your focus is on insurance advisors then, or other kinds of advisors?
Predominantly, and predominantly insurance. Someone can manage their wealth book off of our platform, but the reason we focus on insurance is because it's a pretty big challenge. I mean, on the wealth side, they've come about it in many different ways, whether it's streamlining, the process for actually getting product for a client, or whether it's these robos that have emerged. On the insurance side, we really haven't seen too much on that front. I mean, some of the incumbents have released, I mean, e-applications have come out, some MGAs have tried to streamline their process using digital tools, but on the most part, there hasn't been any seismic changes. And I think that's where Finaeo will play a role in the next few years.
Yeah, because I think that what you're offering with the CRM itself is very important. It seems like a very good tool for people to at least try out, especially if it's free for people who don't have something. And I'm guessing yours is probably cloud-based also.
And I think the one notion I'd want to dispel, because I get this from advisors all the time, is that the cloud is generally less secure. I don't think that's true at all. I mean, if you have, because we're built off Amazon Web Services, they have a team of security experts on their end to ensure that no one breaks in, there are no breaches, anything of the sort. Whereas, if you have a server in-house, someone breaks in, smashes it in your closet or wherever the heck you store it. I mean, there are real security challenges involved in that. I think as we go forward, most softwares are going cloud-based as it is anyways, but I think there's significant advantage in going in the cloud, and that's the reason we've opted to choose cloud alone.
Yeah, another big advantage is if your computer breaks down, everything's in the cloud, you don't have to worry. And so we use cloud-based tools as much as possible. The exception being Microsoft Office, where there are things that we still have to install locally.
Yep, and I get that, and I've seen that a fair bit. I think everyone's going to eventually go Office 365 that operates within that ecosystem, because I think hardware is becoming less important in some aspects. So I mean, if you have, like, your cell phone's becoming more important in your lives, but it's also, the hardware itself is becoming a bit more commoditized. So say, someone smashes your laptop, your cell phone falls in the water somewhere, and let's say your server goes under. I mean, one thing I oftentimes ask advisors is, how long would it take you to get up and running if all these things happened? So say, let's say your server implodes on itself, or drive dies and the backup isn't very good locally. But say, you put it all on taping, you ship it out. A lot of advisors tell me it takes them between 2 weeks and 2 months, depending on the situation, to actually get up and running again, to make sure that the data is, up where it needs to be. And, let's just hope they don't get audited in that time, because then it gets really complicated. So going forward, everything's going cloud-based. I think, a few things will be stored locally, but for backup and redundancy, I mean, there's no better solution than the cloud at this point, I don't think.
Right. Now, Jeevan, you've been monitoring the questions coming in on the live stream. Are there any questions that you can ask us that Gregory can answer?
Yeah, for sure. So one question is, other than having the service using the cloud, have there been any other objections or any other sort of pushback from advisors in regards to adopting your service?
Apart from the cloud? Well, actually, that's a good question. The big one that I've heard, and this shocked even me, was being able to download a lot of the content locally. So say you're an advisor living out, and I'm trying to think of a good example, but like with really poor cell reception, whether you're somewhere in the prairies or somewhere in northern Ontario, you might have the best plan. You might be with Bell or with Rogers, but you hit a complete dead zone. Say you deal with a lot of farmers, for example. This is pretty commonplace with them. So if they're going into those parts and they don't have access to this data, that's a bit problematic. Interestingly enough, that's probably the hesitation that we've heard the most. We're working to mitigate it. It's not something we're looking to tackle immediately, but it might. But we've discussed putting it on a roadmap, only because there are some advisors where that's a serious issue, not one that we can mitigate currently.
Okay, thanks. And in terms of your service, are there any improvements coming, or is it basically in its final form already?
No. Software is never in its final form, ever. So, I mean, just want to throw that out there. I know that there's some softwares that have been around for 20, 25 years. Not much has changed, but software is a process. There's never really an end product, especially now in the cloud era. So we have development sprints every week. So oftentimes what our advisors will see is an incremental improvement here or a new functionality there. I think the recent one was with regards to reporting visualization. So that recently came out. But over the course of the next couple of months, we're revamping our mobile presence. So I think it'll be new, improved, and really shiny. But this is an ongoing thing. So I think as we cultivate and make adjustments, I mean, all kinds of things are happening, whether it's, you know, Amazon Web Services is releasing new things on an ongoing basis, client demands are changing, regulatory demands are changing, so we have to stay on top of these things. I mean, being static in this environment is just not a possibility anymore.
Absolutely. And the final question we have is, how has adoption with advisors been so far in your experience?
It's been good for the folks that are open to it, to be honest, because I think there's still a lot of reluctance, and you know, these things will take time. I know the average advisor in North America is in their late 50s, so I mean, it's not the natural demographic to be adopting new technology. I think a lot more folks are looking at either selling off their business or easing out of the business, or, you know, I mean, it's not the demographic. You know, it's you know, teenagers are usually the fastest ones to pick up new tech. They'll pick up Snapchat and show their parents how it's done. But I think it's been I'm not going to say a slow process, because it hasn't been. I think there's been a lot of enthusiasm behind it, but we've been working very closely with advisors, not just on the CRM aspect of things, but even having conversations around Office 365. If someone has it on their on an in-house server, they want to transition it out, what could that look like? We'll have those discussions. If someone's looking for another third-party software that may be a good fit with their business, these are discussions that we have all the time. So I think from an adoption standpoint, for those that are willing and eager, despite not having a great understanding of tech, we have resources in-house that can help them implement these sorts of things. But I think the number one thing for a lot of advisors is, you know, being willing to, having the will to change and having the will to, you know, make certain improvements in their process and their business. I think that's step one above all else.
Great points. Thanks for those questions from the audience, Jeevan. Now, Gregory, as we wrap up, what's your key message for the people watching?
My key messages, I mean, for a lot of advisors, the last 5 years has been filled with change. We've seen e-applications emerge out of, you know, from different carriers. The process is slowly changing. Everyone's changing. And I think that's only going to get accelerated over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. And I think planning accordingly is going to be important, because there will come a tipping point, and I tell this to advisors all the time, don't be that person that has to change because, you know, you're stuck. You can't use this sort of coding software because you don't have the right operating system. You can't use this sort of platform that will shave off hours every week because, you know, something's completely outdated. I mean, keep your ears open, chat with folks in the industry. I mean, if someone has tech-related questions, reach out to myself over here as well. More than happy to have a chat with you, regardless of what it is. Chances are we have someone in-house that's able to support. So I'd say for my key message to advisors over the course of the next few years is, you know, keep your eyes and ears open, because things are going to start changing much faster than ever before. And I think, yeah, the next couple of years are going to be very eventful.
Okay, that's a great message. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Sure. So the easiest way is, you know, shoot me an email at greg@finaeo.com. So Greg, Greg, at finaeo.com, FINAEO, or, you know, just give me a call, 416-639-1739.
Okay, thanks very much for being a guest, Gregory.
Thanks for having me here.
Okay, and
Thank
that's
you,
the
Gregory.
end of this episode. Thanks to everyone for watching.